Beijing Roner, yes, got it. Spooner is
We're live. We're live.
Yeah, now we're live. Way to go. Way to go. All right. I'll show you real quick, and then I'll dive off because my internet sucks. So, hey, Craig Martell here, coming to you live from the Subarctic CNM show, episode 127. Today, we have special guest Lawrence M. Schoen to talk about that journey from trad to indie at the behest of our host and originator and sponsor and general guru good guy. Where are you coming to us from, Michael?
I am coming from Henderson, right outside Las Vegas. So I basically am coming to you from Las Vegas, where it is a beautifully blue, crisp with clouds, no monsoon, although we had one Sunday. What they call a monsoon around here, but 50, 60, 70 mile per hour winds that uprooted a tree, destroyed my fence. It was fun. Good to go.
The little things. It's the little things.
Yeah.
Good deal. Where are you coming to us from, Lawrence?
I'm just outside Philadelphia.
I am.
What we call the exoburbs of glorious Bluebell, Pennsylvania, where we have a storm warning and a possibility of tornadoes this afternoon. I'm hoping I don't lose power again. I was without power over the weekend for about 46 hours and right in the middle of running a online conference. So that was fun.
And you, Craig?
That's a...
Yeah, Craig, where are you?
Was there a question?
Yeah, where are you coming from?
I live back of beyond. You cannot see my house from the road. Our yard is 2 acres, looks much like a jungle. And behind us, we have a horse pasture on one side, and on the other side, we have 10 acres of forest that is our exclusive use. So Stanley and I walk in there every day, multiple times. It's outside of Fairbanks. It's just outside the city limits. So that's why we have internet like we do. If I moved a mile up the road, I would have 1 gig fiber accessibility.
But you wouldn't have.
But until Starlink comes in, well,
I think you should.
I would not. I would have neighbors too close. I would not have 10 acres. Well, there's a lot of challenges with that up here. So yeah, we explored everything. And since we don't know how much longer we'll be here, the getting my money back on that, it was tens of thousands of dollars to cover that extra mile. So to get my money back on that, not so much. Starlink comes in, settles all the issues. But otherwise, we're here, we're happening, we're now. And I know Lawrence and Michael wanted to talk about their first conversation when Michael and I went to Pittsburgh for a conference and hung out and met a bunch of really cool people, our favorite kind of people, science fiction and fantasy authors. So you explained from your perspective first, Lawrence, what did you...
What did just cut out?
Patrick Rothfuss, and Patrick got like the bodyguards in the way.
Oh yeah, you cut out, Craig. So you went, and so Lawrence, you nothing.
Which could be the theme for this.
Oh man, isn't that precious? Yeah, so I think it's probably just you guys talking, and I'll be possibly watching, possibly not. So Lawrence, explain how this guy came running up to you and introduced himself and talked about the virtues of read between the lines. Now, how we met, and because I know when Michael introduced himself to Patrick Rothfuss was looking for security guards to protect himself from the
That's
fan.
True.
And then Michael went to the bookshop to pick up Patrick's books to then so he could give them out, signed books. So Patrick could give them out. Yeah, and so Michael Patrick So after Michael strolls off to go buy these books, Patrick Rothfuss comes up to me, because we have the table right next to him, and asks, "Hey, is that guy okay?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's a million-selling author. He writes urban fantasy." And he's like, "Oh, okay. It just seemed weird." I'm like, "No. Just trust me. Those are good books. It's good stuff." And I don't know why he came to me, because I didn't know him either. he had just really wild hair on his face, and that usually is
Patrick
is weird.
like
except
Nathan
Lowell. No, here I am talking about Lawrence. Why don't you start? What did you think when Michael when you first talked with Michael in
the
Pittsburgh?
advantage I had over Patrick was that there was a middleman to provide introductions. Jonathan Brazy and I had written a 3-book arc that nobody liked, but we did it. Damn it!
This is 2018. Just to clarify the timeline, this is 2018 in Pittsburgh. First time that Craig, whose stories sometimes are accurate, often are laced with inaccuracies made up on the spur of the moment, as you can hear from his laughter in the background. And so Craig and so Craig and I are going to Science Fiction Fantasy Writers of America. We don't know anyone there practically except Jonathan. Although I kind of played a bit of a fun thing is I bought out, they had, in fact, this one you see behind me with all of the books on it, where you can only see a portion of it. That's one of 6 stand-ups that they had advertising that they were going to sell. 6 pictures of books on it. Each book was like $100 or $150 a clip or something, or you could buy the whole stand. So I reached out really quick and I said, I'll buy them all. I wanted to take over SIFWA's stands. And so I did that. And so, but apparently there were some rumors about what, I can't speak to what they thought about Craig, because it would be inaccurate, whatever they were thinking. And then, or myself, which I felt after the time was inaccurate. But Lawrence and I were having discussions. I feel like you were, the way I still interpret it, Lawrence, was you were there to protect the others from whatever fallacies I might be speaking. And so you and I got into a good set of discussions related to what was indie versus what was trad. But anyway, now your version of the story.
We need to establish background. So what you need to know, and I think this is at the heart of our relationship, Michael, because I understand you come from marketing.
Yes.
Okay? I come from academia. You know, I was a college professor for 10 years until one of my grad students lured me to the private sector. And then I was the research director at a medical center for 17 years. But my life goal way back then was to grow old as a professor and eventually get emeritus status and spend the rest of my days at a library carrel, you know, puttering around, doing my research and just doing the ivory tower thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm not motivated the same way someone with a marketing background would be.
Money. Or we're talking about that filthy lucre.
I can't believe you used that filthy word. Yes, money. So my experiences moving in as a hybrid, coming from a trad background, because I've been doing this for 30 years, making no money to speak of. I'm free to admit that. So now,
but I found your book in overseas. Remember, I sent you a picture one time where I found Barsk. I don't even remember if it was Spain or China or where the hell I found it.
Well, Barsk is the first of 2 books that I sold to Tor, and Tor is the 800-pound gorilla in traditional science fiction in the U.S. So that was a good thing. But fast forward now to 2018, I was on the board of directors of SIFWA at the time, the folks who did that Nebula Awards, and we were aware that you'd bought out all of the banner ads and that you were holding your own luncheon.
That was Craig.
Yeah. Had your name on it, dude. And yet you very graciously invited the board to come by, though we were in the middle of a board meeting, but you know, hey, you tell authors free food, and we were there. And I think it was later that night, you and I got together, and
free food.
My memory of it is that you started courting me. You wanted my input. You wanted to know.
Oh, that's plausible.
What's going on? Here's this trad author. He's on the board. Blah blah blah. He seems to know everybody. and he's going hybrid, maybe? How do I lure him in? Let me give him the first one for free, and when he's hooked, then I'll get to reel him in. So we were talking all night long, and I'm approaching this as I said, as an academic, as a researcher, or as you might say, as a professional skeptic. And
You took it to new levels.
well, you're used to people who are drinking the Kool-Aid, and they see how successful you've been. They see how successful Craig has been. Hell, I saw how successful Jonathan had been. So their reaction is, I want that for me. And my reaction is, pictures or it didn't happen. I want to see the data. I want hard objective facts, and that what you're selling is in fact, and what has worked for you is in fact something that can work for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I grilled you. I don't remember much of the specifics,
Yes.
but I remember grilling you. And to your credit, you rose to the challenge.
Two nights. You did
nights.
this 2 nights in a row, from like 11 o'clock till 2 a.m. Two nights in a row.
To be fair, you did buy me a really nice steak dinner. So at that point,
what was I thinking?
Yeah, it was your mistake, clearly. But what I remember most is, I said, well, Michael, I confess I haven't read any of your books. Tell me your best book, and I'll go out and read it.
Yeah.
And you said, I don't know what you mean by that. And I said, I'm thinking to myself, is English not his first language? What is your best book, Michael? And you said, well, and you gave a title and said, this is the one that sells the most. This is the one I've made the most money on. And right there, I knew we were working from what we in psychology would call very different operational definitions. Okay. And that is kind of an unbridgeable chasm between us. I'm aware that you have a completely different worldview on how one goes about being an indie author. And I can sort of, it's sort of like speaking another language, and you can communicate, but there are going to be bumps every now and then. And we had some bumps, some of it, but it's always been a delight and great fascination to talk with you, because this is a completely different perspective on publishing than I've experienced for the past 30 years. And I realize, it hasn't been around that long, and timing is everything. And you jumped in at a critical time, built your empire, and now you just sort of sit back playing chess.
Yeah, I wish. It's still working, Lawrence. I still have to work for my living.
No.
But it's fun work, but it's work nevertheless. And I think that you bring up an interesting point. There's my worldview and how I desired to do indie publishing, but there are others. My interpretation of what you and I were talking about, there's a certain amount of, like, your own quality of creating a stellar literary being an operative word, masterpiece that is appreciated by those who have certain opinions and are recognized by others who have opinions. And that's just not my gig, right? But you can do that in indie. It's just not as often as it's done, because in order to accomplish it, you generally have to be part and parcel of those in the know of what you do to get awards and everything else, which I don't. I'm clueless. If you had asked me a year before who does the nebulas, I wouldn't have been able to answer that question. So it's yes, exactly. And and God forbid I should have to actually understand that Worldcon was a different country every other year. I didn't know any of this stuff. So I come in this as a babe, ignorant. All I really cared about was, as an indie author, you have this opportunity to, write books and make money, and there's no one to stop you, which I've had discussions online with people who are like, well, that's the whole point of, there's no one to stop you. There's no one to stop you from writing crap. I've said, except no one will read it. No one's going to read crap. You're not going to get enough money. So if you care to spend enough time to put crap out, it's hot. Now, granted, there are people who game the system, but that's taking us far afield.
Sure.
So, so anyway, going back to you, you and I were having this first set of these long discussions.
Well, One of the things that has come clear to me since then is that we're talking about two very different audiences. And as a consequence, two very different styles of writing. So the two books I did for Tor that Craig alluded to before, Barsk and its sequel, The Moons of Barsk, are very highbrow. You know, I sometimes joke, you must have a master's degree to pick up this book. And it's aimed at the kind of audience you described, the traditional publishing audience, which is at times is very full of itself. I'm happy to concede that. And it's the people who get nominated for the awards and la la la. My experience
which by the way, we have to admit, you've got 5 or 6 nominations. You've done some great work in that arena. Just for those who didn't know.
We can elaborate on that if you like, but that's not why I'm here. But the indie reading audience, which arguably is much bigger than the trad audience, is looking for a different experience, in my estimation. And they're not looking for necessary. They'll take it, but they are not necessarily looking for that full intellectual, challenging experience. They want to be entertained first and foremost. Which is not to say the trad audience doesn't want to be entertained. All of my writing has always been what I forget who came up with this phrase. It's about beer money. You want your reader, when they finish their book, you want them not to say, man, I could have spent money and had a beer. So you're trying to entertain. But the stuff that I'm writing now, the stuff I've been writing as a hybrid author, is more popcorn. It reads faster. It writes quite a bit faster. And while I can't divorce my authorial voice from the professor in me, there's going to be lectures in there. There's going to be information that gets dropped in. You're going to learn something. That's not the focus. And now we've got, all right. Craig has lost video. Michael has left.
No.
I am charge. Oh man, that was so close.
Look at that. Already you're trying to take over the class. You barely step in, they're out of here. I'm taking over.
I will tell you, my goal since that conversation back in 2018, when
I was ready to dive in, Michael. I was ready to dive in, man.
Sure. Nobody watching this believes that for a moment, but that's okay. Again, I need to point out that I am not a clinical psychologist. I'm a research psychologist, so I cannot specifically, professionally address Craig's delusion. But
I would love another show in order for you to do this. Trust me, as much as I had to take the crap he gives me like he did at the beginning of this show, every damn show. But I'll also take this opportunity to say you do a lot of hypnotism therapy type stuff, as well as who is the one who helped create the Klingon language?
I did not create the Klingon language. That was Dr.
Right.
Mark, who was hired by Paramount Studios, now CBS. For my crimes, almost 30 years ago, I created the Klingon Language Institute, which just this past weekend, when I was without power, held their 28th annual conference, which
and
it was never supposed to run this long. And that's a whole other broadcast. And they're the folks who published Hamlet, restored to the original Klingon, the Tao Te Ching, from the original Chinese into Klingon. More recently, we published the translation of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz and The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And
I'm sure that The Wizard of Oz is something that really just rolls off the tongue in Klingon.
Dude, once you can do Shakespeare in rhyming iambic pentameter in Klingon and get all the wordplay to translate into another language, it's all easy.
Piece of cake. So what does it cost for, I'm sorry, I'm really taking us far afield. What would it cost to do a 10,000 word translation of someone's work into Klingon just because the author was stupidly had the money and wanted to?
Well, you'd first need to find a translator willing to do it. We just published an original novel
Mm-hmm.
which is 2 capitals. And it's this big, fat book, probably the biggest book we've done. I don't know how many pages. I was not, I did the layout and gross editing on it, and then sent it off to Amazon, and they sent back this proof, and I mean, it's like this thick. So, given that most of my books are under 100,000 words, I'm guessing this is probably 300,000-400,000 words as a novel. I don't know if
Gee,
anyone's
Chris.
going to read it cover to cover, but the fact that we can do this, that's a lovely thing. And I've finally gotten comfortable with the fact that the Klingon language isn't it. The KLI is my legacy. It's what people will remember me for. Not any of the brilliant research I did as a research psychologist or as a psycholinguist, and not any of my own fiction. They're gonna, oh yeah, you're that Klingon guy.
Exactly. Which was one of the things, and I'll bring those back around to 2018 when you had something where people are talking about you with the Klingon guy, and I hadn't have a clue what people are talking about. So before I derailed us and we went far afield, you were saying that you and I had a chasm between our expectations and what we were communicating. When you asked, "What's your favorite book?" and my only answer I can give you is, I can tell you what sold the most. That's up to you.
Well, so you were drawn to me because of the whole Klingon thing. So it's Michael Anderle thinking, "Oh, look, a dancing monkey," or let's be a little kinder, a dancing bear, because that allows me to invoke that great aphorism: "The amazing thing about a dancing bear isn't how well it dances; it's that it dances at all." And I think that's a fair description of a lot of what I do. But since embracing the hybrid model, and full credit where it's due, because of tremendous feedback and generous conversations from both yourself and from Craig, endless advice, which sometimes took the form of, "Lawrence, I don't know what you're doing, but it's wrong. Try something else."
He's distinct. He gives exact advice on how you should change it.
Yeah, it's wrong that what you're doing. Do something else. But since then, a little over 2 years, I've put out, what am I at now? I think I have 31 titles out in the world. And in 2018, I had 5. So
Awesome.
my goal, I'm not making any money yet, but I've got the backlist that I should be.
That's huge.
And now I'm working on trying to grapple with the marketing and try new things to actually start selling that backlist. But my goal is to be the 20 books poster child.
I mean, you do realize we can make that as easy as take a picture and put you on a poster, right?
I need the bona fides to go with it. I need that. What is the name of the people? I need the book report screenshot. I need the house in Cabo, Michael.
50K.
50K. Yeah.
Oh, you want the money? That is what you.
Let's be clear. I started at the beginning. I don't want the money. My wife.
You know what you said? Okay. I'm quite fond of it. It was funny because you were having an argument with Jonathan about it when Jonathan came up to you and was talking about it, about making $100,000 plus. And you're like, "I don't care about money. I don't care about money." So Jonathan graciously offered that should you guys make more than 100,000, he would take the rest. And I seem to remember you're like, "Yeah, that's okay."
See, and you've met my wife. You know my wife. Valerie trained as a chef. Valerie grew up in a prosperous household. Valerie is used to finer things than it would ever occur to me to look at, let alone purchase. So we have an arrangement. We're fine. I'm not going to be living out of my car anytime soon. I don't need to hit my dog up for dog food. None of that. But the plan is any income that then comes from my books goes into a special fund, and we're just going to use that money to travel. Now, conveniently, given the state of the world, I'm not going anywhere right now. And my health is such that until the infection rate drops precipitously, I'm not getting on an airplane. But someday soon, I hope, we'll be able to resume
She
travel.
didn't negotiate very well.
She's at a disadvantage because she's madly in love with me, as I am with her. So, we're okay here, and any extra money is to see the world while we're still relatively healthy enough to enjoy it.
Yeah. So with that, I mean,
Still waiting
you
for the invite to join you and your wife in
Indeed,
Cabo.
indeed. Let's go back to.
I
That
love
counts
the
as
way
a
he
trip.
we lost
But
you.
if I can take us back to if I can take us back to 2018, and yeah, there's a delay. Sorry. You talked about that you and Michael were almost at the opposite ends of the spectrum in regards to the audiences, and I suggest you were trad authors are generally insulated from that, in that the publishers take care of they have the gate, they know their audience, and the people write books for that's the audience. And so your books, hey, we think we can sell it to our audience, but they didn't go above and beyond in regards to selling.
Well,
so as
not
indies, we are more aligned with our audience. Well, if you're writing for awards, that's a different world in entirety. But if you're writing for a living, which is what indies are mostly doing, then you need to be better aligned with a broader audience they're doing. Because I think from a percentage standpoint, I like to believe that indies are much better positioned for full-time authordom than trad authors.
It's a numbers game there, because you look at the people who come to 20 books, and the vast majority of them are not going to make a living, I think, as indie authors, and a very large percentage of them haven't done their first book, but they're there to try, and God love them, some of them are going to succeed, and they're going to grow just from the experience. So that's all good. But there's also, it's always that percentage that makes it and those that don't. The same is true in trad. I was very fortunate in my experience with Tor, because I had an editor who championed my book, and Tor threw tons of publicity at me that a lot of their authors don't get. They decided I was part of a marketing campaign of meet the new authors of Tor, and they put out a brochure with 20 of us, and they took 4 of us and put us on stage at BEA and at New York Comic Con, and made a huge deal out of this, and spent insane amounts of money, I presume. I can't imagine what it costs to get stage time at Comic Con, but I know it ain't cheap. So they were very good to me there. And then Tor has been going through transformations in its management. My editor left, other people came and moved around. My second book came out, and my editor had already gone, and I had what they refer to as an editor of record. And I went to her and I said, okay, now let me tell you about book 3. And it was, we don't want book 3. And I said, but book 2 literally ends on a cliffhanger. I'm telling people, don't read the last paragraph. They'll be unhappy. And it was, the editor was saying, look, if we bought book 3 and it tanks, I'm going to get all the blame. And if it does well, I'm not going to get any of the credit. That'll go to the previous editor. So there's nothing in it for me to do book 3. What else do you have, Lawrence? And so I'm hoping by the end of this year to run a Kickstarter to pay me to write book 3. Because it's already been outlined, there are notes, it's all ready to go, and I can churn that out. Well, I can't churn it out because it's a very different process, but I can get it done over the course of the following year. So for me, part of why I embraced hybrid was to build up the backlist with the idea that when I had enough books in the backlist generating income, I'd be free to write that third novel that was on a par with the two from Tor. And I see these as very different kinds of writings. The stuff I've been doing on my own for the past 2 years, it never goes to my agent. I have a very good agent. I don't send this stuff to him because there's no one to get his 15% from, right? But the idea is these books should eventually, if I can crack the marketing, these books will generate a nice bit of change, and I can take time off from that and write that third novel and conclude that arc for the Barks series, and then see what I want to do.
I like one of the things that you're clarifying that's true for the hybrid indie model is it's up to you. You are the person directing Lawrence M. Schoen Author Inc. in this case, whether your desire is this mountaintop or your desire is to write Barsk 3. I mean, really, and then it's up to you to create the tactics. But no one's telling you no. No one's telling you you can't do this. And quite frankly, I'm well aware some authors should be told no. But really, at a certain point, I personally assume the market's going to tell them no. I mean, I'm well aware it's like, generally speaking, they're not going to read it. And there's where you go. Are there books? I guess for me, the biggest argument I have a lot of times is when someone comes in and says that book that sold, 50,000 copies is horrible. I'm like, well, apparently 50,000 other people are pretty okay with it, or 49 or 48 if it's still selling. So it's like, that's just your opinion. My opinion matters, not to 50,000 other people. That's it. It's just an objective statement of fact.
Spoken like a marketer.
Yes.
Yeah, because people bought that book before. Obviously, they bought that book before they read it. By which I mean some external force pushed them to buy that book. Now, whether it was a skillful marketing campaign on the one hand, or a trusted friend who said, "You got to read this book. It'll change your life." Those are two very different reasons to read the book.
But that presumes then that every good book actually was read, which I'm calling BS. Most literary books, not most, a substantial portion of literary books look good on the shelf for when people come over, when that used to happen, and see them on the shelf. Oh, you have this. It's not read.
Part of that feeds the imposter syndrome that every author has. Trad or indie first-time author or 20-time veteran of the New York Times bestseller list. I think everybody at some point in the process of writing a book thinks, "Oh my God, I'm a fraud, and the world's going to find out." It's been fluke after fluke after fluke.
Yeah, 20 James Patterson, fluke after fluke.
Oh yeah, he's a crying little baby every time he sits down. Oh no.
Anyway. Yeah. At a certain point, you give that up. But yes, it happened at some time.
You give up most of it, or you don't admit to it. Certainly. But I'm far enough along, and I hope old enough that I'm not trying to please anybody else. And probably the greatest gift of going hybrid and embracing more of the indie approach is I write whatever the hell I want. For the most part. Now, it's been pointed out by many successful indie authors that you want to write a series. You want them to read book one, be delighted and enchanted, and say, "Hey, what else is there in this series? Oh, look, book two." And you want that read through. So I'm trying to focus more on that and give the readers something to continue on. And more than just that, I've taken my initial series, which has novels and novellas and short stories, and I've already generated 2 spin-off series that have published, and there's a third in the works, and I'm toying with a fourth, so that there's continuity, but there's also something new. There are new characters, but then you have bit parts of walk-on characters that we've seen in other books. They come strolling across the screen, and I'm having a lot of fun with that. And hopefully, this is creating an experience for my target audience. I haven't necessarily completely defined who that target audience is,
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, me too. And it may just be a couple guys sitting in a diner. I don't know, and they're not spending enough money because there's only the two of them. But it's like I have other stories that I want to write, and I was working on finishing some of them off. And my wife says to me, "That's not part of the series. You should do the next book in the series." I said, "But I want to write this." She says, "And you can after you do the next book in the series." And she's right. From a practical point of view, I need to write the next book in the series. She wants to go to Aruba. That's how that works. And now, with the recent medical travails, let's put it that way, there has been real question of how much time I have left to write, and that's part of what lit a fire under me last year, putting out 12 titles in 1 year. And this year I may surpass that. But I'm actually more relaxed this year because I found a number of things I was doing wrong. I completely misunderstood how the Amazon algorithm works, allegedly works. And I've relaxed a lot from that. And again, that comes from receiving better intel and sage advice from Craig, from yourself, when Craig isn't frozen on the screen like that. And it's been huge. And it's one of the things I'm happiest to see exists in the indie community, because it's very much alive in the trad community, this notion of paying it forward, that nobody gets anywhere in the business without help from someone who's come before. And what Craig refers to as the rising tide lifting all boats is the same thing. And I continue to try to pass that on. 12 years ago, on the occasion of my 50th birthday, I looked at my checklist of things I wanted to do with my life, and I realized I checked them all off. So it didn't all have to be about me anymore. I could start giving more back. And I've been much more active as a mentor, both in trad and in indie, trying to help people avoid some of the mistakes that I've made along the way, with the full realization that it's not the business it was when I started. It's not the business it was 10 years ago. There are many more options available now, and there are all sorts of doors that have closed. But one of the things I do, and you don't need this, but a lot of new authors who are still enamored of traditional publishing in some regards, who grew up reading people from those ranks, and are in awe of them and learned a lot of their craft reading those books. If I'm at a Worldcon and one of these people asks me as part of my, someone I'm trying to help, I'll say, okay, pick a night, attach yourself to me, and I will introduce you to everyone. Now, that's a bit of an overstatement because I don't know everyone.
Not much.
But I was, what's the term? I helped run the voting for the officers for like 8 years. I forget the name of the title. And so everybody sent this is before they had electronic balloting. Everybody sent their ballots to me. So they had to write my name down on a piece of paper. So everybody knows my name. And when I first started out, I would volunteer to work the bar in the party suite, in the writer's party suite. So everyone would come to me, and I would give them a drink.
To get their drinks.
And they formed this positive association. Remember, psychologists, they formed this positive association.
That's marketing.
Happy juice. I like this guy.
But that's marketing.
So years later, when I started having books, I knew these people, and they would read my books and say, "Hey, Lawrence, how are you doing?" So one of the things that I do for the people that I'm mentoring is, okay, come with me, and I will introduce you to everyone. Anyone that I know, you will know by the time the night is up, if we find them in our ramblings throughout the party floors of the hotel. And that's just part of paying it forward. That's part of, I'm in a position to do that. Why wouldn't I? It doesn't do me any good to hoard that kind of knowledge or ability. And
Mhm.
one of my greatest personal accomplishments is getting to the point in my own insecurities where I could see a friend or colleague succeed, and it wouldn't occur to me that that in any way diminishes me. That I could
That's an
celebrate.
interesting point. So let's talk about that, because you have to have seen the darker emotional issues that also are within indie. And that's one of them, right? Where people have this real comparatitis. And Craig talks about this. I'll speak on his behalf because, he's just, there's a head. Or, I try to push it myself. It's like, look, you run your own race. You'll never be number two when you decide where the finish line is. So run your own race. But so many have to, they get a little bit of success, and now they have to compare themselves to the next person and compare themselves. It's like, there's no massive benefit. Now, some people can have a positive outcome, but generally speaking, it doesn't work very well to do that. And what would you say to the indies that you've witnessed now the last few years, that you've seen that, or you've seen the discussions on 20 books?
I think it's human nature to make ourselves miserable, because when we compare ourselves to others, we always look up and we say, I haven't sold as many books as Craig. I haven't written as many
Mhm.
books as Craig. I don't have the following that Michael has. I don't have the numbers that Michael has. I suck. We don't look at all the people, all the little fish, right? There are always bigger fish, there are always littler fish. If you want to be happy, only look at the people who are trailing you and say, ha ha ha, I'm so much better than they are. But really, at the end of the day, the only person you're in competition with is yourself, because you can't really
Mhm.
influence how the other writers are going to perform. You can improve yourself. You can look at your craft and say, wow, I don't know how to plot. That might improve my books and my readers might be happier. You can say, I don't know how to market. That might improve my sales and I'd reach more people and make them happy. You need to just, eyes on your own plate. Now,
So is the
to the
yeah,
extent that
so really,
to others,
go
like
ahead.
20 books or other trad authors, or the relationships you establish at conventions with either set of authors, you can learn how they did it and what worked for them and adapt some of that to your own needs. That's great. But there's no mental health to be found in comparing yourself to others. It's only going to make you unhappy. And there's enough in the world making you unhappy.
Well, but yes. So here, at least one of the ways I interpreted what you just said was, people are choosing either to be easy but feel bad about themselves, or they're choosing that they need to make themselves better, but it's work. So do you want to work on getting better, or do you just want to say, I'm not as good as, in which case you don't have to work?
Well, I think we're going to go back to operational definitions here. I think a good operational definition of work, if you're working at something you love, it's not work, it's life.
But you
I
might not
know.
want to do marketing.
Then you find someone you can pay to do it, and or find out why you don't want to do it, or make some choices. And having choice, this is a theme in a lot of my books. That's, I think, the secret of all happiness is the ability to have choice. Have choice in your own life. And if you don't want to do a thing, fine. There's no judgment call on the choices you make, so long as you make the choice yourself. It's all about agency. And because if you don't make a choice, somebody's going to make that choice for you. And you've seen this. You've seen this with the authors that you publish. Um, and sometimes it's easier just to say, go ahead and make the choice for me. I'm going to focus my efforts over here instead. And that's fine. That's a different kind of choice. But, at the end of the day, there are a lot easier ways to make a living than writing and publishing, whether indie or trad. Uh, but if you're doing it right, it's not work. It's an adventure. It's a delight. My favorite thing about writing is having written. I like to look
Yes,
at
no.
finished work and say, I can't believe I did that. That's so good. I feel great. And then the next day, it's start the next book.
So when did you go to your first 20 books?
Um,
2019? Did you
No,
make one?
2018. 2018, went to 2019.
Okay.
Nobody went to 2020. So yeah,
Yes.
I've been.
Okay. What were your thoughts since you came in there willing to learn, right? So the definition of researcher is they're willing to get the information. It might contradict what they know or it might not. So it's kind of a neutral feeling toward it. It's not like you come in there with a plan. What were your thoughts on that experience of those 2 years?
Oh my gosh. I went in and the big take home lesson from 20 Books for Me in 2018, which you have to realize was just a few months after we met at the Nebulas.
Yes.
So you got in my head, and I went to Vegas, and I'm sitting in the audience and I'm looking at one of the talks and I'm thinking, son of a bitch, all of my covers are wrong. And I love my covers. I have the original artwork from those covers, and I completely relaunched the series with new covers. The image behind me is from one of the covers from a freebie story that starts the entire series. Go online now, order Buffalo Dogs for free, and sign up for the newsletter in the back. So that was a huge eye opener. The notion that I had to, in that little thumbnail, tell a potential reader, this is science fiction. This is light, humorous science fiction. You need to buy this book now. Not just, here's a cool image. The author likes it. Go ahead and buy the damn book.
I wish they would do that. That'd be really great.
Well, I've done the hard part. I wrote the book. That's my job as an author. And I think, it used to be that was the perspective of the traditional author. I could be wrong on this. And if traditional authors are, particularly older traditional authors are watching this, you're going to say, oh, Lawrence, that's so naive. But, once upon a time, I think your job as the author was just to write the best book you could. And the publisher would handle everything else. And now the publisher is saying, well, you're going to work out your own social media campaign and you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And it's like, no, I got to write the next book. Well, you'll do that too. And in the trad world, that was a little easier because, they don't expect you to write more than one book a year, right? Let alone, 12.
Right.
So that's a very different experience.
And now, just for those that just got shook to the core, when you said 12, what are the sizes of these 12 books on average?
Okay, well, on average, they're probably now. Some of those are novellas, so they're coming in at about 40K. Some of them are 100K. I focus more on.
Okay, so you range.
And I should tell you, there's a group of writers I've been working with, workshopping with for more than 10 years. And they've done all the workshops and we've been in each other's pocket, so to speak, for so long. They're a great resource because they will tell me, Lawrence, see what you did here. It's crap. You need to fix this. But they are agog when I say, well, publish another book this month, like last month and the month before. And how? And
butt in seat, maybe?
Pardon me?
Butts in seats, maybe? Put your butt in your seat and start typing.
Best advice I ever had decades ago was from Laura N. Gilman, who said, ass in chair. And it's the best advice I've passed along because I don't mind saying ass. I'm hearing crackling. Craig is eating.
That's something. Craig.
Yeah.
I can't even mute him because he owns the power to this.
I'm not.
We should be able to mute him though. Yeah, clearly. So
we not only didn't.
Part of it was because about 2 years ago, less than a week after my 60th birthday, I got some very horrendous medical news. And everything in my life changed. And my wife came to me and she said, what are you going to cut out? Because clearly I was going to have to start trimming. And I cut everything out. It came down to my wife, my dog, and my writing, and everything else fell by the wayside.
And you were referring to when you said the 2 years ago, well, you definitely have been open on social media about this. What are you talking about?
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to go in that direction.
Well, just no, not so you had cancer, right?
I still do.
Okay.
20 years ago, I was diagnosed with an incurable but treatable blood cancer, multiple myeloma, and I underwent ultimately a bone marrow transplant in late January of 2020, um, and I knew this was coming. I mean, we prepped it for months in advance, and I knew that as a result of that, I was going to be in isolation. I was going to go into lockdown for a month or two because I would have no immune system, and I
Mhm.
prepared. Right? We stocked up on toilet paper and hand sanitizer and all those things, and I got into the mental space of I'm going to be alone. It's just going to be me, my wife, and my dog for 2 months. And I'm a very social, very extroverted individual. I normally do between 6 and a dozen conventions a year, uh, and I need that. So I prepared, and then COVID hit. So on the plus side, I was ready for it. On the downside, I went into lockdown a month and a half before the rest of the world. And my plan was when I came out, sometime in March or April, damn it, I was going to treat myself to a trip to Aruba. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it, but I was going to go to Aruba because, I'd survived. And in fact, I almost died from sepsis while I was in the hospital. They don't tell you that until after you're better. Oh, yeah, you almost died.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so,
So we go through this, right?
Yeah.
So we have that situation. You come out, now it's COVID, so you're not going to go anywhere anyway.
and
And
there
you made this decision, wife, dog, writing.
and there were months of, there are after effects of that kind of thing where, they refer to brain fog. Um, I like to describe the brain fog. There were many days where I would look at my feet and say, "Oh, I have both a left foot and a right foot." Big, high cognitive insights. So there were days where I just couldn't do anything. I was lucky I could feed myself. Um, and it's worth noting that I came out of the hospital 40 pounds lighter eventually from all of this, which in some sense is great. If you ignore the cancer, I'm in the best health of my life. Um, and
You have more hair.
I started over. I was cue ball, and then it came back, and I shaved because I wanted to change, and my wife liked this more, and I said that's fine. It took me a while to recognize the guy in the mirror, but that's okay too. Um, but that I wasn't able to write for months because along with the brain fog, there was fatigue and there was exhaustion, and they are very different things. And yet somehow in that span, released 12 books. Now, some of that were things that were piling up, waiting to be released or about to be released before any of this happened. But they they were on deck, and I'm pulling the trigger on that. But I'm also relaunching an entire series and rebranding myself, um, and studying like
What was
that.
learning all that?
Pardon?
Yeah, so let's talk about that just a little bit. The studying like mad part, because when you become an indie, and I think that's really kind of relevant for a lot of people, you have options. If you go traditional, that, like Lauren said, while they don't do everything for you, they sure do a hell of a lot. And so your responsibility might be limited down to your social or to the different things that you need to do. But when you become an indie publisher, as opposed to just an indie writer, you are now kind of responsible for learning some of the other stuff. And then, we've encouraged people to learn, where do you need to learn Facebook ads? What do you need to do about Amazon ads? What is this thing? All of these different aspects that you take control of in order to try to figure out what are the dials that you can tweak to get your book in front of enough people to find out whether or not it's a good book. Because if you're spending $150 worth of advertising and selling $120 worth of book, and you're not getting people, assuming that you have a series, and you're not getting people to read book 2, that should be a good indication to go write some other series.
So one of the hardest things for me, and you're going to laugh at this because of your own background, I am, in my head, in many ways, still a starving grad student. And the idea of, which is a polite way of saying, I'm just cheap. Frugal doesn't cover it. I'm cheap. And the idea that the classic aphorism of you have to spend money to make money, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't see it. And the big turning point for me was finally getting it in my head, feeling it in my gut, that it wasn't an expense, it was an investment.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
That's a good point.
Fed my own ego a little bit, which made it more palatable because I have a huge ego that I'm investing.
It's 40 pounds lighter.
Well, yeah, no, that was all down here. This part is still. The beard is gone because the beard was 10 pounds, but I wasn't investing in the book. I was investing in me. I was investing in the author. I was investing in the brand, and that investment would pay dividends beyond a specific book.
Yes.
Because I wasn't trying to sell the book. I was trying to sell the kind of book I write. So whether that person gets excited about the Adventures of the Amazing Conroy or the spin-off book, or they want something a little more philosophical and they want to get into the Barst books, or something completely different. I did a book called Pirates of Mars, which was just a bit of opera earlier this year. They know what they're getting. They're getting a Lawrence Schoen book. And that's where the investment in my head was going toward. And I did Brian's Amazon ads course twice. I'm now working my way through the SPF courses and Facebook ads. I began building a mailing list and devoured Newsletter Ninja, and began trying to identify my target audience. All things discussed on the 20 Books Facebook group, sharing ideas. This worked, this didn't work. Building connections that I started at 2018 20 Books, meeting other authors who, here's what I'm doing, here's what you're doing. Authors I've met from being in anthologies of indie authors. I've been in the last two of Craig's, and I'm blanking out of the name. I'm sorry, Craig. Space opera anthologies, and I owe him a story for the new one. And I'd be writing it right now if I wasn't here. Yeah, that's the story. And building those connections. I was present at
that's the expanding universe.
Expanding universe, yes, not the expanding wasteland. The expanding universe. And I was present at the 2019 secret, not so secret meeting that started the ISFA, and started making connections there. And at the same time, part of paying it forward, taking these new relationships and saying, I have a weekly feature where I showcase an author, a thing called Eating Authors, and would you come on it? And maybe we'll introduce your reader, your books to new readers in a win-win kind of thing. And it's something I do because I can, because I'm in a position to do that. And some of the authors have been skeptical. And why would you do that, Lawrence? You don't know me. And my response is, because I can. Because people who have resources that I don't have been very generous in sharing them with me. Why would I not do likewise and pay it forward and do my part to raise all the boats or offer a hand down to someone who could use it?
Who do you focus on in your marketing? Because I just, while you're sharing this, I went and jumped on your Amazon page, your author page. I wanted to see, by the way, I love your amazing Conroy covers. But anyway, going back to the reality of this one, who do you focus on in your marketing?
Well,
how do you focus it?
The pragmatic answer is the wrong people, clearly. So there's that. And I've only just started trying to advertise to, what do they call it? Where you Facebook,
Lookalike?
a lookalike audience, yeah. So I've taken the mailing list has gotten large enough, and these are mostly people who have self-selected. So they have
Excellent.
identified themselves as the target audience, whatever that means. Target audience for me is people who buy my books. Yay. And using that to help have Amazon use whatever mystical means they have.
Or Facebook in this case.
I'm sorry, Facebook. Yes, Amazon. We keep hoping they'll do this too. And they'll put an ad in front of these people. So,
and how many people are on your email list to get that number to get Facebook to start that?
Realistically, the newsletter list is at about 1,300 now.
Okay, so really good.
Only half of whom are actively opening everything. But
so did you use that 500, in order to build your lookalike audience?
No, I threw them all in because I needed the numbers. So it's not as pure. And then there's a little slider bar. Do you want a tight focus of these people, or are you willing to open it up a little wider? And I was doing my first ads to build that mailing list. I was giving away.
All right. So in that, you probably are mature enough now to go to those 500 and do a very tight list.
Yeah.
I see that your lookalike authors on the page actually is still Craig and myself and a lot of the LMBPN group. And we might or might not be, right, your target. I don't know if I just don't know. But unfortunately, for a fair amount of authors who we come into contact with, will support, and then our fans are wide readers who, hell, except for very few things, they'll go read and try anyone. And once they've tried, enough of our fans have tried your books, you now get associated with us, which might or might be accurate until you fix that, right? So if you go with 250, by the way, just for those listening, is kind of where the minimum quality emails that you want to start using to do lookalike audiences on Facebook. So 500 is actually a really good one. 1,000 is where you're like, that's about as solid as you need to be for Facebook. Anything beyond that is like asking for a percentage of 1 point in difference compared to how powerful the Facebook algorithms are.
So that's huge. And I hope anybody who's listening stops the recording and goes back and writes down word for word what you just said, because I think that's gold.
Well, we spent a few $1,000s with consultants to find this out. So you're talking about investing. LMBPN invests tens of thousands of dollars to try to learn this stuff. And that was one thing we learned, that you get 125 to create a target audience to get to 250. The 250 then is used to get to 500, and the 500 is used to get 1,000. And then once you're at 1,000 solid real people, you're pretty solid.
And that's kind of where I'm at now. It's early days, and I'm trying a number of things. I was having a conversation with Craig a month or more ago, and he turned me on to Free Booksy. And I just recently did my first Free Booksy ad. And my feeling was, and again, cheap. Do I want to give a book away? I don't want to give a book away.
Oh, no, that's Craig. Don't let Craig give you any bullshit if he talks about that or 99 cents.
No. Free Booksy. Free Booksy. So I looked at sales and I said, I've sold 3 copies of this book in the last 6 months. It's not that I'm giving it away, it's that nobody's buying it. So I did the Free Booksy ad, and this is book 1 in a 3-book series. Nobody's buying books 2.
Yeah, don't do this on a book 1 of a 1-book series.
No. And it's one day, right? The ad goes out, cost me $75. I also pimped the hell out of this book in social media. This was just over a week ago on the 20th, which was my dog's birthday. And I'm saying, my dog wants to give you a book to celebrate his birthday.
Nice.
Right? Because
I can remember that one. Write that down.
You suck. If you do like dogs, you will download this free book. Almost 1,200 copies were downloaded. So now we're in the wait and see period. Will this translate into read through? Will people buy books 2 and 3? Will I get more reviews? And I've seen very little yet, but it's barely been a week. And I'm, it's too early to tell. And I'm prepared, even being as cheap as I am, I'm prepared, if I see any kind of success there, to turn around and apply this to another series.
So let me Let me jump in real quick and ask Craig. Or you want to finish that word, and then I'm going to ask Craig something. Go ahead.
Even while I'm waiting for this to happen, I'm finishing the next books, so I'll have another series to then apply this to as well. And the idea is see what works. If it works, do more of it. If it doesn't work, well, either it doesn't work because it just doesn't work, or 2, I'm doing it wrong, or 3, this is not the time to do this. Put it on the shelf and you can come back and revisit it later. And I'm getting comfortable. I have a chunk of money set aside to invest in myself, to spend on ads, to spend on these ventures. And I have enough product in enough diverse series that I can do Facebook ads for this series. I can do a free Booksy ad here for a different series. I can focus on an Amazon series over here. So, and this is the researcher in me, that I can, hold these variables independent of one another and test the effect of whatever marketing attempt I'm making and see what works. And then down the line, replicate it with one of the other series. Build that target up, let them define themselves, and then use the lookalike. So there is a plan. It is moving slowly.
Sure, because you're a research scientist.
There you go.
So, Craig, if I were to say somebody just gave away 1,200 free books, how many of those do you think will get opened in the next 4 weeks? What percentage? Because I know I've heard
20 or 30.
Craig? Yeah, so 1 to 2%. Somewhere in there is, it's generally I've heard 1 to 2%. You might get a few percentage more, but it's going to take 6 months. So 1,200 books, look for 20, 30 MOOCs to be opened, which means that those will be done over however many days, and then they have to read the book, and then they have to love it enough to go to the next one. So in order to do, free, when free was really powerful, it was a situation where you were constantly giving out 20 to 30 a day. At some point, that 20 to 30 a day at 1% was enough to start driving, book 2 sales consistently, because now you're giving out 30,000, 35,000, 40,000, 45,000, over time. How that applies, like we'll do the occasional free Booksy. There seems to be some benefits on ranking once it goes back. I mean, you generally should lose your rank, but there seems to be potentially some follow-on for a few hours, and maybe you get a few real sales with it, depending on what's going on. But it's out there. All you need is 2 or 3 people who really love your stuff, and then they'll tell 2 friends, and then they tell 2 friends, and then all of a sudden you're selling 20 books every week instead of 2 books every 6 months. And
that's really the hope that even if it's just 1 or 2%, I would be very happy with 1 or 2% discovering me and saying, "Wow, I am your audience. Oh, look, here's this list of 30 titles in the back of this free book. I'm going to buy and read them all over time. I'm going to join your mailing list. You're going to give me free short stories because I'm there with you every month on your mailing list. Wow, what a guy." And I'm going to tell my friends because I'm your audience and I love what you do. And that is, the goal, that this should start to snowball. And we'll see. Again, I'm in a very fortunate position that I'm not depending on these book sales to keep, the roof over the head and the lights on, because
it's your race. But it's your race. You get to choose what you want to write. We often talk about there's what you want to write, and then there's what people want to read, and you want to try to find what crosses, right, where you want to write it. Some individuals, due to opportunities, can write more in what they want to write. And fuck what you want to read. So there's what I want to write. Beat that out. Sorry, Craig.
So one of the things complicating this last year was I was preparing to die. Okay, I was grappling with my own mortality. I was getting comfortable with things, and I said, okay, let's do as much as we can in the time you have left. And then a couple months ago, about 13 months after that whole transplant thing, I'm sitting down with my oncologist. He's done all the tests. He's punctured my spine again to draw in, the bone marrow, because that's always fun. And he says, "Yeah, you're in remission." I'd say you still have cancer, but it's basically asleep. You've got 4 or 5 years before it wakes up and tries to kill you again, and we'll see it coming, and we'll probably have new techniques, and worst case scenario, we'll do the whole bone marrow transplant thing again, which, by the way, is a horrible experience. But suddenly I went from I'm about to die to I got 5 years. And the first thing I thought was, I can publish another 60 books. Yeah!
That's okay. That honestly, when
Yeah. Well, and part of that,
Yeah.
and this was the other big personal growth moment earlier this year. I've resolved to stop chasing awards. I've been nominated 6 times for the Nebula Award, once for a Hugo. I've won 2 Kyoto Awards, various other bits. And if I get the nomination, yay, it's lovely. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed whatever it was you nominated. And if I don't, that's okay too, because that doesn't define me. I've had this great career from the perspective of most anybody, whether they're trad or indie. But as I started with, there are always bigger fish, there are always smaller fish. And when I look at the award list now, it's what I might enjoy.
I don't know, Craig, if you realize that we can hear the pang.
Hey, Stanley. Whereas my dog is sleeping.
The tail wagging underneath the.
No, not wagging, beating something senseless.
We're going to go out on a limb here and assume it's the dog making those noises.
Yeah, we are. No, you know what? Let's not. Let's just
family-friendly programming, guys. Come on.
Wagging his tail underneath the tail. But it's been well over an hour. It's about time to wrap up, if we may. So, any final words, Lawrence?
Other than buy my books, no.
Any final words?
Useful words. Every day, the person you're in competition with is yourself. You want to be better than you were the day before. And if you're not, cut yourself some slack, because the sun's coming up the next day and you have another chance at it.
I like that. I will say, thank you very much, Lawrence. You and I kind of, we've done work together. We've done some business together. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time, and I don't remember if you finally reached out to me, or actually I reached out back out to you earlier this week, and I'm like, I want to get you on because I want to find out where your story's going. I was there in the beginning for the discussion related to Indy. I knew you had moved much further, that you were helping some people even doing it, but I didn't know where you were going or what your mentality was at this point. And it sounds like part of it is certainly from your research capability. You're starting to recognize that it's just business. And I think Martha Carr had, she talked about this 4 years ago. And you have to disengage yourself from the success and go, it's data. It's the ability to understand I'm investing in myself and I'm learning, which you're gonna, in any good school, you're gonna have to pay for that. So you just happen to get a chance to get paid back. It's kind of like gambling a little bit where, you do this, it's a lot of fun. You theoretically are going to get money back, which you mostly just put right back in. But, it's part of the learning experience of going, I'm going to invest this. If I invested $100 and I get 50, I did something wrong. Product is wrong, cover is wrong, something's wrong, but I'm going to get research information. And every research company that goes out there and has to query people about what is their opinion, which is what reviews are, which is what results are, they're going to pay for that. So assume that you actually get potentially paid back, and paid back handsomely, for having to pay for something you'd normally have to pay for anyway. And then at the end of the day, your stuff, and I'll let you go ahead. You got 2 minutes, man.
I think you should take great satisfaction in knowing that, as diametrically opposed as we were when we met back in May of 2018, damn you, man, I have been dragged kicking and screaming to embrace many of your points. And you invoke Martha Carr. She was one of the keynotes at 20 Books in 2018, told her story, and I sat in the audience rapt and going, "Oh my God, this changes everything." And I sent her a note afterwards. She had no idea who the hell is Lawrence. And it was great. So yeah, there's part of me that still wants to be the artist, and that's
You
fine.
can be. You're welcome to be.
But it's nice to be able to balance the checkbook too, and there is that juggling act. So yes, I'm doing much more marketing than I used to when this all began. I'm beginning to understand more of it and gaining insights into what will and won't work. And of course, the market itself is constantly changing, which is also frustrating because when you think you've got it, no, it's different again.
And that we're going to leap off there. I don't know what the hell Craig is doing.
He's just laughing at me, and he's trying to hide it.
Could be.
No, it's dog farts.
Did not need to know that. This is going to be the show. Is like, stop asking Craig. Just stop.
He's laying right here. He's got the cannon aimed at me. You do set yourself up for that.
You take these scenes, you put it in a book, Craig. You don't share it in public. Oh man, you want to get paid for it.
With my best friend over here, there is no stopping what he'll say. It's not going to happen.
Thank you,
Lawrence, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me,
Craig. You got nothing. You're just going to die.
Thanks,
over there.
Lawrence. Thanks, Michael, for running the show today. And
yeah.
Bye, everybody.
In with comments.
Bye, folks.